The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. At that time, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, for him to be born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be made manifest in him. We must walk the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night comes when no one can walk. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." As he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and anointed the man's eyes with the clay, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam." So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, "Is not this man the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." The man said, "I am the man." They said to him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. The Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I can see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such signs?" There was a division among them. So they again said to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes?" The blind man said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he see now?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son. We know that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know. Nor do we know who opened his eyes. Go and ask him. He is an adult. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess him to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents say, "He is an adult. Go and ask." So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." And the man answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I know is that though I was blind, I now see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" The man answered, "I have told you already," and he would not listen. "Why do you want to hear it all over again? Do you too want to become his disciples?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Why? This is a marvel. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Now Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of God? He answered, and who is he, sir, so that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, you have seen him. It is he who is speaking to you. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. Jesus said, for judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard this. They said to him, are we also blind? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you will have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains. The gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ. Lead questions for today. Question number 1. Summarize in one sentence only the message of today's gospel. John chapter 9, verse 1 to 41. Question 2. Jesus came to heal humanity of darkness and blindness. What are the indications that darkness is still widespread in our environment and that many of us are still blind? What are the indications? Question 3. Distinguish between the blindness of the man born blind and the blindness of the Pharisees that were Jesus' adversaries. And question 4, quote, you were darkness once, but now you are light. Be like children of light, unquote. What concrete steps are you taking to function as light in a society overwhelmed with darkness? Yes, Bishop.
I'd like to answer question 3.
Yes.
Distinguish between the blindness of the man born blind and the blindness of the Pharisees. Because the blindness of the man born blind is the physical blindness.
The man born blind, his blindness is physical blindness. Meaning if he came here now, he will not be able to
see.
Okay.
And the blindness of the Pharisees or the physical blind, or the spiritual blindness.
Spiritual blindness. Look at your back. Are there people with spiritual blindness here? Huh? Look at these people here. Some of them have spiritual blindness, right? You are too polite. Okay. Okay.
So the distinguishness between the blindness of the man and the blindness of the Pharisees. The blindness of the Pharisees is worse than the blindness of the man.
It's worse. The blindness of the Pharisees is worse than the blindness of the man born blind. How?
Because if Pharisees were not blind spiritually, then they could have been able to believe and understand that he could now see that Jesus was the one that healed him.
Okay. If they were not blind spiritually, it would have been easier for them to believe that Jesus healed him.
Yes, but they were doubting that. And they were doubting. They did not know where he come from. They were saying that they were disciples of Moses, while the blind man was the disciple of Jesus.
Okay. Give him a round of applause. He has made the distinction. Yeah, give Victor microphone.
Let me attempt question 1.
Okay.
And I think you already summarized it. It's the gospel talks about conversion. That gospel tells us the story of the man born blind who was healed miraculously by Christ.
This is why people feel wired. In one sentence, Victor, one sentence.
No, I've already said that it's conversion. It's a story of conversion.
It's a story of conversion.
Yes,
Try
in one
another
sentence.
Try another sentence. Let's see.
A story of faith.
The story of faith. Okay, can we say it's the dynamics of faith? Can we say that together?
Dynamics of faith.
Meaning how faith works, or the dynamics of conversion, not just the story of, but the dynamics of conversion, how the process or the processes of conversion. Can we say that together?
Processes of conversion.
So, how much of the marks do you get now?
100.
You are. Give him a round of applause. Okay. Yes. I've not mastered your name. Your name again is?
Bem Shima.
Bem Shima. Okay, Bem Shima. Okay, I will know it after today now. Bem Shima. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to attempt question 2.
Yes.
Jesus came to heal humanity of darkness and blindness. What are the implications that darkness is still widespread and that many of us are still blind? But I think the indications that we are still in darkness is the choices we make every day.
So the choices we make,
Yes,
they indicate
that we are still in darkness. We are still blind.
So what kind of choices are these?
Choices like kind of like the society we live in. You know that there are so many illegal things that go on in the society.
A lot of illegal things.
There are a lot of unscrupulous activities that people, like in our society, we have been battling with corruption. And
Corruption is a work of darkness.
yes,
Evidence of blindness, isn't
yes.
it? Hmm.
And aside that, there's so much hatred also in our society as well.
So much
Hatred.
hatred.
Yes.
Yeah, hatred in hatred.
And added to that, the issue of ethnicity, that I belong to this group of people, I'm from this tribe, and the rest. These are all
Evidences of darkness. Ethnic bigotry.
Yes.
Evidence of darkness and blindness. Sure.
Aside that, sexual immorality, that is widespread as well in our society today.
Sexual immorality, promiscuity, infidelity, and so on.
And apart from that, injustice. There's no justice in our country today. Look very well. Look critically. So there's so much injustice, which is still part of darkness, which we are still in. And those,
you know, talking about injustice, there's a story told of a man who asked a lawyer, please, can you show me the High Court of Justice? Where is the High Court of Justice? And an old man said, that is the High Court. I don't know whether it is a court of justice. So there is injustice, right? Mm-hmm.
And those people that involve themselves in these kind of activities, it's clear indication that they are blind. Clear indication of
when you
blindness.
speak like this, you implicate some people who are looking at you. I hope you know. When you speak like this, you implicate some people here. What do you tell them?
better turn a new leaf.
Turn a new leaf.
Yes.
To change.
Total
Okay.
change and surrender.
And surrender to the Lord, who is the light of the world. Give him a round of applause. Yes, Helen.
Father, let me attempt question number 4. You were darkness once, now you are light. Be like children of light. And to be like children of light, Lord has also told us in the scriptures, take care of, be compassionate, obey God, be kind in all you do. And as he said, be just to all. So what concrete steps am I taking to function as light in a society overwhelmed with darkness? Father, yesterday I saw a man begging, and all within me, the light in me told, reach out to him. I was blind. And I realized that I was blind. And I questioned myself, why are you behaving as if you have not seen light, as if you have not encountered Jesus? And I realized that I did that because I was being judgmental. Judgmental in the sense that I looked at him and said, you should be working, you should be doing something. Or I've seen you hold that paper somewhere else. Jesus is kind to all.
So will you go and look for that man today? No, it's not a laughing matter. That's the way to clear your conscience of guilt. It is to do what you fail to do as much as possible. That's the way to clear your heart of guilt. So you can look for him.
I could if I see him.
If you don't see him, somebody looks like him.
Yes.
You'll help.
And this makes me realize that God gives us opportunities and he expects us to use them at the time he's giving us. He gave me that opportunity. He may not give me again. An angel may appear to you, and if you don't act, you may not see that angel. So it sent a strong message to that don't judge or procrastinate or argue about why he's doing that. Just be good because you are light.
There is a moment that is presented to each one of us. We are not in a position to clearly distinguish who is pretending, who is may even be richer than me, whatever. That is not actually our business. Yeah. If we have the opportunity and we have the means, help. If the person is a crook, the person will answer for his crookedness. But you see, you have done what your heart tells you to do. Is that understood? And you move on free. So, yeah, I know that we are in an environment of insecurity. I mean, a lot of people are so frightened. I'm told that people are going around now saying that if you give money to somebody, then their fortune will transfer to you, your fortune to them. I said, listen, I am a writer. Right? I am a writer. I trained as a writer. And I earn my living from writing, for example. How, if I give some money to somebody, how will that experience of 30, 40 years of writing, how will it be taken from me? If not idiocy. And the thing is spreading in this country, how? You see, it is only the kind of money Nigerians make that can go easily. When people talk about hitting money instead of making money. So if you hit money, of course, it can also bounce away. But if you made money with hard work, with experience, how can it go away like that? I know that a place like Abuja, maybe 70, 80% of rich people, they hit money. They didn't make it. They didn't make it. They hit it. So if you hit it, then it can disappear the next day, right? But if you spent your life preparing yourself for a profession, and you are a professional, and you are making a living from that profession, and people need what you are doing, how can giving money to a beggar all of a sudden turn you to a beggar? And for people to believe this just shows the level of blindness and darkness in the society. This is serious because I'm hearing that there are people who no longer give money to beggars because they are afraid that the beggars will take their fortune, will exchange their fortune. And I hope there are no people here who believe that. If you know anybody who believes that kind of nonsense here, tell me, I'll kick the person out of this chapel.
And secondly, I come here, I'm enriched by your homilies. And it's not for me to keep it to myself. So I share it at work, the marketplace, or wherever I find myself. For instance, I talk about gratitude. And any class I go in, first sometimes I ask them, how many of you thanked somebody today? Thank Almighty or thank God, parent, so. And therefore, I found some people who don't know how to, and I am connecting them to people.
Thank you very much. Give her a round of applause. To be blind is to dwell in darkness. Blindness is a painful affliction. To be blind is to lose your vision and dwell in pitch darkness. To be blind is to be unable to do what? To see the beauty of things, to recognize human faces, to distinguish between white and black, and to differentiate between day and night. To be blind is to live in some kind of isolation, to be alienated in some way from one's environment, to be liable to stumbling and falling. On account of the blindness in our environment, so many are stumbling and falling. Blindness can be found on two levels, physical and spiritual, as Bishop said. There is the blindness of the eyes, but also the blindness of the mind, the blindness of the heart, the blindness of the spirit. Jesus is the light of the world. He heals not only physical blindness, but also the spiritual one. So in an environment where sickness and suffering were seen as God's punishment for sin, and it is not all over, people are still thinking so. The apostles were confronted with the case of a man born blind. Who sinned, himself or his parents, for him to be born blind? Jesus rejected the direct connection. Now listen, we're going to be talking about the fact that most of the problems of the world are a result of the fall of Adam, right? A result of sin. Sin, singular, sin. But our Christian theology does not make a direct connection between an individual's sin and what happens to him or her. At a conference yesterday, you were there, Helen and others, at the conference on parenting, somebody said, there are these young people who look at older people, say, look, this person messed herself up, was sleeping around with so many people, she got married and she has 2, 3, 4, 5 children. This person kept herself and she married and she didn't have children. So it is, what is he saying? That it does not pay to keep yourself. And after I called the person aside, Inya was there, right? And I said, the person you are talking about, is he a Christian? He's a Christian. If he's a Christian, do we have a choice regarding chastity? Is it about, let us even imagine that it is true, that all the people who mess themselves are having good family life and many children. Now, does the end justify the means for Christians? Does the end justify the means? Let us even imagine that that were true. Because the person who asked that question, what it means for me is that the person has not accepted the way of light. The person is still attracted to darkness. What it actually means is that the person is attracted to the life of promiscuity and is looking for an excuse to engage in a life of promiscuity, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? The person is attracted to the life of promiscuity and is just looking for an excuse. And human beings are wonderful at looking for excuses. Looking for excuses. I mean, we are getting to a level in the world where a young woman, a young man is ashamed to say that I am a virgin. That's a terrible world we are getting into, isn't it? That's a terrible world we are getting into. And God has not adjusted his commandment. The commandments of God remain the same. God has not adjusted his commandment. So, even if everything changes and everybody become Malians, and not obeying any rules, but God has not changed his rules, his regulations. Jesus went on to say, this is an opportunity to show you the goodness of God. Does that not puzzle you? This is an opportunity. The blindness of this man from birth, and he is coming forward to you now, is an opportunity to show the goodness of God. He then proceeded to heal the man. As Jesus healed the blind man, he revealed something about God's work. He showed God's sensitivity and compassion. So, the presence of the man born blind on that occasion was an opportune presence so that Jesus will teach us. You see, I keep saying here, Jesus never performed one miracle to show off. All the miracles performed by Jesus were meant to teach, were meant to reach out to somebody suffering and use the occasion to teach. Jesus never advertised, is anybody sick? Come, here I am, a healer, a miracle worker. No. He showed the sensitivity and compassion of God in the face of suffering. While the apostles were busy speculating, as many of us do speculate about suffering. Why was the man born blind? Why did his father sin? Did his mother sin? Did he sin? Why? Whatever. Jesus does not engage himself in philosophical discussion about suffering. He does something about the suffering. Do you understand? Same thing with us. It is a waste of time. Philosophical questions. Why me? Why is it happening? It doesn't help. But what can I do about it now? That is what helps. So while the disciples, apostles were engaged in the speculating and engaging in all kinds of controversy on the source of the man's problem, Jesus went straight into action. He touched the man and healed him of the blindness. So simply talking about a problem will never solve it. Only action will. Nigerians keep talking about our problems, right? We are good at, anyway, you see 3 Nigerians standing. Chances are that they are talking about the Nigerian problem. Right? Ben Shima. That's nice, isn't it? Ben Shima. So, when Nigerians are gathered, they are likely talking about the Nigerian problem. But how many Nigerians are taking concrete action? Very few. Better to light a candle than to cause the darkness. Can we say that together? Evil, suffering, and pain are a reality. The best response to it is to do something good. The best response to evil is what? To do something good. It's not to complain about the evil. It is to do something good. Take some action that can relieve the suffering. Why are there so many? Why is there so much? Why is there so much bad governance? Why is there so much injustice? Why is there this? Take an action. Take some action. Do something about it. What the blind man needed was not a lecture on the origin and the source of evil. Will that help him? No. What he needed was action. It was healing. What constituted a problem for the apostles became an opportunity for Jesus to show the goodness of God. In giving sight to the blind, Jesus showed that he was the light of the world. And that is how you and I will show that, as Jesus says, we are the light of the world, by reaching out in the midst of darkness, showing that light with some action. some gesture of light. It is not about going around and saying, can't you see me? I am light. No. It is by their fruits you shall know them. Like Jesus, we should see the suffering of others as an opportunity for us to do what? To serve and to care. To show God's love and compassion. Every time we are face to face with somebody suffering, it is an opportunity to show the goodness of God. We are challenged to use every opportunity that comes our way to show the goodness of God. The blind man got healed physically, but he got much more than he bargained for. He got much more from Jesus. He also got healed how? Spiritually. He got healed of the blindness of disbelief. He got healed of a closed mind. He got healed of a small heart, a closed heart, small heart. He got healed of an impoverished spirit. At the end of the story, the man said what? The same kind of confession of St. Thomas. Lord, I believe. He had experienced a transformation from blindness to sight, from darkness to light, and from unbelief to faith. The encounter leads to what? To worship, to faith, to worship, and to witness. Now, when he began to talk to the other people and said, do you want to believe in him? How can? Because he has healed me now, you are saying he's not from God. Come and see. What a marvel. He began to witness to Jesus, even before he actually encountered. Between the blind man and the Pharisees, while the one who was physically blind got back his sight, saw clearly, and he believed, the Pharisees who were physically sighted could not see, or rather, they refused to see. The greatest tragedy, my dear friends, is not to be born blind. It is to have eyes that fail to see. Worse still is to have eyes that refuse to see. So the tragedy is in grades, is in degrees. The highest degree of the tragedy is to have eyes that refuse to see. To have eyes that fail to see is a tragedy. But worse still is to have eyes that refuse and refuse. This is the kind of blindness that plagued the Pharisees, my dear friend. It is caused by the sin of what? Pride, arrogance, presumption. Let's understand those sins. And this is a sin that we all human beings struggle with. Pride, arrogance, presumption. These are the sins that made Adam to fall, that made Eve to fall. These are the sins that made Cain to kill his brother Abel. These are the sins that made anyone you can think of who has fallen. Pride, arrogance, presumption. What the story of the gospel shows us is that there are many forms of blindness, and that blindness afflicts the human being on much deeper levels than just the eyes. Blindness afflicts the human being on much broader levels than just the eyes. The Pharisees were proud. They were unyielding. They were devious. They were evasive. Above all, they were blind. In the case of the blind man, however, after being healed, he saw more clearly than the learned religious leaders. Yet, the Pharisees did not know how blind they were. To see well, to have good eyesight is not enough. Though the Pharisees had perfect 20/20 eyesight, right? They were terribly blind, as they could not recognize the works of God in Jesus. They had no faith in him. They were not prepared for the power wonderful light Jesus shed. In fact, they wanted to cover it up, to obscure it, to prevent others from seeing it. They wanted their darkness to be the light. They rejected the light of Christ because it exposed the lie they had lived with all the while. During the course in parenting yesterday, some of you who were there, you remember Dr. Kechuku said something about how values have been put upside down now. That what is reigning all over the world are the vices. It is the vices that are celebrated. It is the vices. So we have a new culture that a new generation celebrating on account of the failures of generation, where darkness is being proclaimed as light. Darkness is being proclaimed as light. And those who are attempting to live in the light, some are now having to hide themselves, because darkness is so dominant in the environment. This is the summary of the Malian culture. I was at a retreat at 12 Apostles Church, and I asked whether they were familiar with the Malian phenomenon. And one man said, what are you talking about? These are people from Mali. I said, do you have children in primary, secondary school, university? If you don't know, you better go and know. Because it is actually a metaphor. The Malian phenomenon is a metaphor for what has happened, the degeneration that has happened to our society. It's a metaphor. And Emmanuel, you people did a proper dissecting of it yesterday, right? Both from the lecture and the group discussion. Pity for those who missed that workshop. Yes, the Pharisees rejected the light of Christ because it exposed the lie that they have lived with all the while. At the heart of the controversy over the healing of the man born blind in John's Gospel is the distinction between light and darkness. At the heart of the controversy over the healing of the man born blind in John's Gospel is the distinction between what? Light and darkness. Truth and error. Sight and blindness. Innocence and guilt. Holiness. And speaking about this, I want to come back to what we celebrate. The vices we celebrate. I have been complaining of the fact that how come in our society you don't get responsible people? You know, like get Osita, who has worked in the Ministry of External Affairs for 35 years and retired. Get him as a product ambassador. How come that the people they use as product ambassadors are just whoever, somebody who is able to strip herself naked, somebody who is, those they call, how come we cannot make celebrities people who have worked hard for the country? They are celebrities. But how come that our present generation does not recognize them as celebrities? What is happening about, how come it is only entertainment and weird kind of entertainment that make product ambassadors? What's going on? Who are those responsible for endorsing those product ambassadors in our society? Who are those projecting them? What kind of values do they have? Because you cannot give what you do not have. Who are those who it is only if I can dress in the most weird manner, then I can become a product ambassador? What's going on? So the issue we are having is a conflict between light and darkness. And in our environment, darkness seems to be overpowering. It is a conflict between truth and error. I mean, see what the question that was asked. I think it was the last question yesterday. The question that was asked about whether, okay, if I keep myself, and then they said that the people who kept themselves, they marry and they don't have children. People who don't keep themselves, they have a happy family. And what answer did the lecturer give? He said, well, Simply because somebody marries and has many children. Are you seeing what the consequence will be in the life of the children and grandchildren? Just to have children is not. And we need to know that with Christianity, there are higher values than physical human life, including family and children. And until we know that there are higher values in Christianity, the value of purity is higher, which is why we have saints like St. Agatha and St. Lucy. Purity is higher than physical human life. And if we forget all that and all we are concerned about is, oh, that person did not keep herself, and look, she has a happy family, and me, I kept my, what? I listened to that question and I'm saying, are you talking about a Christian asking this question? You know, that was the question I asked. Is it a Christian? Then for me, the answer is clear. The end does not justify the means. And unless we get that clearly in our heads that the end does not justify the means, for Christians, good end, good means. Good end, good means. Otherwise, it's a good means to feed your family and have a big house. That's a good end. But to go and commit armed robbery in order to get that, is that a good means? For Christians, the end does not justify the means. It doesn't matter how wonderful the end may be, the means to that end is very important. It is a conflict between sight and blindness, between innocence and guilt, and between holiness and sin. And that conflict is rife in our society. It is not just coronavirus. The conflict between holiness and sin, innocence and guilt, sight and blindness, truth and error, light and darkness, that conflict is quite rife. We are seeing it in politics, right? Between truth and error. We are seeing it in the judiciary. We are seeing it in the way police carry out their business. We are seeing it in every sector, in the economy. We are seeing it in every sector, between truth and error, sight and darkness, sight and blindness, innocence and guilt, holiness and sin. And we, whom Jesus has called the light of the world, we are the one to go into the world to expose the error, to expose the darkness, to expose the blindness with the sight that Jesus Christ has given to us. Darkness of heart is the darkest night of all. Can we say that together? Yes. The hearts of the Pharisees were in darkness. Not even Jesus, the light of the world, was able to bring light to them. As for the man born blind, not only were his eyes open, after encountering Jesus, his heart was filled with light. While the Pharisees grew more blind, the former blind man grew in insight. He was able to identify and proclaim Jesus as a prophet. Now, the dynamics of spiritual blindness. Selfishness is a key one. And what does selfishness do? It blinds us to the needs of others. Materialism does what? Blinds us to spiritual values. This is the problem in Nigeria today. Materialism. Materialism and individualism. Me, myself, and I. And then just about this world. No, this world. My family, my wife, children, my car, my house. Perhaps one of the positive things God will teach us with coronavirus is that all that can go in a minute. Right? All that can go in a minute. So that we begin to look at the essentials. What is important? I mean, the Lord will help us. Otherwise, we have a plague that is capable of wiping us all out. The Lord will help us. And may he help us. But with the little experience we are having, let us learn lessons about the smallness of life. I think some things are going on social media about how tiny the virus is. Tiny little microscopic virus. And it has gotten the whole world on its knees. Tiny little one. What if God had brought one that is up to my fist in size? Next is pride. Pride blinds us. Pride blinds us. Did I look at you? Did I call her name? Pride blinds us to our own faults. Okay. Pride blinds us to our faults. With pride, we are not able to recognize our fault. Insensitivity blinds us to the hurts we are causing others. The Pharisees were insensitive. That is why they could not recognize that this man who was blind, who is seeing, they are trying to hurt him. Prejudice blinds us to the truth about others. Prejudice. And lust blinds us to the meaning and purpose of our bodies. Once again, I was a few days ago at a workshop at one of the universities on the abuse of sexuality. And it amazed me, it really amazed me the extent to which we have sexualized the feminine body and how women themselves have not helped much in preventing the objectification of the human body. The human body has been so thoroughly objectified, feminine body, so thoroughly made into a tool of pleasure. I mean, people are talking about, you see the forearm of a woman is sexually provocative. Something is wrong with you. And as I said here the other day when we discussed this matter, the areas with the worst rape cases in the world are the areas that cover the most. So something has to happen in the mind. When we sexualize the body, when we over-sexualize the body, not even the feet, a naked feet of somebody that will not be sexually provocative. We need to begin to reorient, re-socialize our young people, male and female. And the women themselves need to be careful. By this excessive decoration of the body, you are presenting, what did the lecturer call it yesterday? Your physicality rather than your humanity. Is that not what he called it? All you are telling is that you are like advertising your physicality. And when I ask people, why are you doing all this? They say, men like it. So what are you? You are a product. You are a product on the shelf. We really need to do something about this objectification of the human body. Turning the human body into an object of pleasure. And you young people, if you do not work on yourself to see the human body as honorable, as created by God and honorable, not just as a tool of pleasure for me, but with dignity in his or her own right. If we don't do that, then we are really, really in trouble. And that is the origin of sin, to turn everything into an object of pleasure, rather than just an image of God, honorable with dignity. Many years ago, I think it was some 30, 35 years ago, I wrote a poem I called The Rose. Some of you have my poetry book. Check The Rose. The rose. There are many things in the world that are for your eyes only. You see a rose garden, beautiful, but you're not the owner of the rose garden. And so, we all have a right to look at the rose garden, but we don't have a right to pluck the rose. Only the owner of the rose has the right. And if we do not raise our children with this, no amount of covering is going to save us from a promiscuous society. And like I said, let's balance it. That women please don't go around promoting your physicality. You are much more than your body. You are much more than your eyelashes. You are much more than whatever you are. I told you that I went to a secondary school where they were doing graduation in a girls' secondary school, and I saw the way the graduating students dressed. And some of them were dressed like call girls. And I called the school authority and I said, are these not supposed to be students who are graduating? They are supposed to be in school uniform. And all the discipline of the school is still supposed to show. What are these things in their fingernails? What are these eyelashes? For students that are graduating, is this what they have come to learn for 6 years? How to show their physicality? So, women, you have work to do. Inya, on radio, you are in school. You have work to do to help women themselves, to present themselves in their humanity and not just in their physicality. Because if it is, you are worth more than the pleasure you give to a man. If it is pleasure you give to a man, what did Dr. Kechuku say yesterday? He said that in a few years, the people calling you auntie now will be in the business and you'll be forcefully retired. Oh, he said, if it is your physicality you are showing, the people who are calling you auntie now, in a few years, they will push you out. They will be the one in the business and they will push you out. Decorate that physicality and it will not attract any man. But promote that aspect of you that will always be there. Amen? Promote that aspect of you that will always be there. I showed you the picture of my mom when she was a young woman. Was that not the beauty queen? What is it that is still in her today? That is her humanity that needs to be promoted. We live in a terribly confused world when darkness pretends to be the light. When ignorance believes itself to be knowledge. I mean, these are part of the things you learned yesterday, right? We live in a world where ignorance pretends to be the light. There are people who are on social media and they have 1 million, 2 million people on social media, but they are ignorant. They know nothing. They have the following. They have, all our young people are following them. What do they know? Have they studied philosophy? Yesterday you were hearing all the stories about Sophocles, about Aristotle, about Socrates, about all that. Do these people, do they know all that? So they know nothing, but they have all the following because ignorance is pretending to be. When pride thinks of itself as humility, when blindness sees itself as light, it is a very frightening, but sadly, it is very common. Very, very frightening, but it is very common. In such a world, powerful agents of darkness will put up a strident fight against the light, but they will not succeed in Jesus' name. The light of Christ is one which darkness cannot overpower. Amen? John chapter 1, verse 4 to 5. The light of Christ is one which darkness cannot overpower. As in the case of the Samaritan woman at the well, we read last Sunday, the blind man had a powerful encounter with Jesus. He was transformed forever. His life was not the same again. On account of the experience, he became what? A believer in, a disciple of, and a witness to the Lordship of Jesus. He told his story as simply as it happened. He became a missionary. To become a true witness of Jesus, it is not a certain kind of studies that we need to pursue. What we need is a certain kind of faith experience. You know, I've been talking of this encounter for a long time. What we need is not a certain kind of studies, it is a certain kind of faith experience. Then we could confess Jesus as the blind man did and say what? I was blind, but now I see. The man called Jesus opened my eyes and set me free. Christianity is about knowing and following a person. It is not about knowing and following a book. It is not knowing and following an idea or even a set of doctrines. No, Christianity is about following a person, Jesus Christ, who says in John 14:6, I am the way, I am the truth and the life. Christianity is about following Jesus. And we need to know Jesus in order to follow him. Heavenly Father, we thank you, we praise you, we glorify your holy name. Thank you for your love and your goodness. Thank you for giving us this message about the light, even as we live in the darkness of coronavirus and other vices in our society, and other viruses, both material and spiritual. Lord, with your light, dispel the darkness in our hearts. With your light, dispel the darkness in our society, including the darkness of this coronavirus. Lord, protect our people. Protect your children. Show your wonderful works, Lord, and help us to learn what lessons we need to learn from the present scourge. That with you, nothing happens without a reason. As we live here today, Lord, help us to reach out to people in love, in compassion. Help us to shine your light, to demonstrate to the world that you are the light of the world and you have made us agents of that light through Christ.